Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Really, just a more chatting one, but I wanted to talk to you all about my thoughts after hours, and I'm pretty certain nearly finishing the story of Endless Ocean Luminous. Let's get into it. So, I have a few pros and cons that I wanted to talk about, and I'm really curious to see what your thoughts are as well. My big problem so far that I've been experiencing with Luminous, and honestly, I feel like it could be rectified. I'm not sure if there's anything they have planned for the future. They are hosting events, so that gives me the idea that they have some sort of support that they plan to follow through with in the future. But my biggest con is that the story segments seem very short, for what the payout is for when you're scanning. So as any of you know that you've played through if you've played through the story, it requires you to scan a certain amount of creatures to be able to progress, right? So I think the first one is like 1,000 or 1,500, and then it progresses to 2,000, 4,000, 6,000, 8,000, etc., etc. But the story segments are so short that it makes those scans and all the time and effort you spend um, finding these creatures, or at least scanning these creatures, very insignificant. And almost like the payoff isn't worth it. And I mean, I get the idea that every creature that you scan that is full of lumen or luminous, that energy goes to saving the coral, the world coral tree, or the world coral, which very much so is adjacent in my mind, at least, to like the world tree, the lore of the world tree. Um, but yeah, it doesn't feel like all of those scans are quite worth it. It feels like busy work almost, like you're going, you're scanning, you're doing these things that uh, you need to be doing to save the world coral. However, the payoff for that is a 2 to 5 minute story piece. And at least for where I'm at, which I believe is 5-2. I'd have to check to be very sure. But the story segment on now requires me to fully uncover the 99 portions of the mystery board, which, while yes, is not difficult, right? It is also gated because some of the creatures to finish the storyboard require you to have a partner and swim to these plates, right, to uncover a part of the tile, of the mystery board, excuse me. And you have to have a certain capacity to be able to swim with those creatures, which requires you to then dive some more and more and more to increase your level and increase your capacity. So it feels very grindy, which, don't get me wrong, some other Endless Ocean series, like Blue World, for example, grinding dolphins to be able to have a dolphin show to gain money, etc., etc. But that is more like a side piece. Like you don't have to do that to finish the story. In this one, you have to grind to finish the story. And I'm really hoping that the end of the story has a wonderful payoff, because I feel very let down by it right now. Um, it also feels a bit disjointed, and maybe it's just me, maybe I'm not getting the full picture here, but each chunk of the story feels like it doesn't quite mesh with the next. So I remember doing some of the early story, right, and kind of learning about the world coral, and then I think it was 4-1 or 4-2 is like, now you're in the Veiled Sea area where it's just all prehistoric animals. And it was very odd going about learning about the world tree to now we're in a prehistoric area, which I like the prehistoric creatures. I think is really nice that it's very well done. I just don't think the story blends very harmoniously, and that's kind of a downer. Not really even a downer, just confusing. It seems very confusing to me, because I'm not sure where the end payoff goal is, right? So maybe at the very end, once I finish the mystery board, it'll all make sense again. I'm really hopeful that that's the case. But so far, I'm still kind of not sure where the developers are going with it. Now, I know I've been kind of complaining for the first part about the cons portion here. But I only have one more little con to talk about before I get into the pros and what I really did enjoy about Endless Ocean Luminous. So, that being said, the final thing I did not care for was Sarah and Daniel. While I don't think they were the worst aspect, I feel like this story could have been done almost without them. I like that it was voiced, but Sarah. just seems like she's just informational. She's just your sidekick AI, tells you what you need to do, the Navi, so to speak, of this game. And Daniel seems more like sometimes, and I don't mean all the time, like comedic relief, like sometimes it pans out well and it's funny or it makes me chuckle, but more times than not, it just seems like he's there to fill the void, the space. I genuinely think the game could have been done without Daniel, and it felt just the same. I let me know what you think in the comments below because I'm genuinely curious. I don't think he's a bad character. I just don't think there's anything that he provides that's of substance, right? Again, talking about the older games, not that that's. I know that this game is not a direct sequel, so I'm just comparing to give insight, right, and to give you something to kind of chew on and think about. So, for example, in Blue World, the different characters had different traits that you would gain when you dive with them. So, if you were to dive with Gigi in Blue World, you would be able to hold more capacity when it came to finding treasure. It would make your bag larger. If you dove with Hayako, she would tell you where certain creatures were, whether you have found them or not, but also give you some scientific background on the creature, which I thought was really cool. Oceana, if you were to dive with her, you would find more of the, I call them like glimmer spots, the little shiny spots that typically have smaller species or golden coins for your collection. And then there's the plethora of dolphins that have different traits as well. So that each character you could dive with, there was something special that made you want to dive with them. I don't think, even if there is no like land hub area in Luminous, that Daniel provides anything that makes it feel special that he's in the game, or that he just doesn't have substance, right? That's kind of where I'm going with this, is that there's no substance to what he can provide that makes it worthwhile for diving with him, right? Other than the occasional comedic relief. Sarah, I think she's okay as far as like necessity background information. I think that's nice to have. Um, in that retrospect, I think that she's a little bit higher on the priority list of necessary characters and than opposed to Daniel. Um, but yeah, Sarah first, then Daniel. Honestly, I feel like the series could have been done without Daniel, but that's just my opinion. Okay, now let's get into the pros. What I really enjoyed, and this is coming from somebody who recently got into the Endless Ocean series, who played both games, Endless Ocean Blue World, and now Endless Ocean Luminous within the span of 4 months. Like I've played them all very recently this year, so that's coming, but just a precedent coming from my perspective. I really like the fact that Luminous put a very strong tie on group content. While not everyone is capable of that because of the online factor, which being that you obviously have to have an online subscription to be able to dive with other people, that's a whole nother aspect that I've talked about before. But I think that it's nice and it feels like a lot of fun when you're diving with people, especially if they're your friends. Personally, I have really enjoyed being able to dive with my community. It's been a lot of fun. And if you've dove with me, thank you. I think it's great. I have a lot of fun with doing that with you. And I would love to one day be able to max out a map with 30 people that are just from our community. With that being said, there is no way to have like a private lobby, which is kind of crummy. So it makes it difficult to get the people that you want into the group and only those people. So I guess that's kind of a con as well, is that I do really like the large group content, but I can't control who's in the group with me. Um, the next thing that I really like, and it's makes me think of kind of like blind boxes. I don't know if you guys like that kind of thing, but like when you're opening something like a gift, you don't know what the gift is, or if you're buying a blind box and you don't know what's inside of the box. I get that feeling, that kind of excitement when we scan for the UMLs, the unidentified marine life, right? So you don't know which UML you're going to get when you spawn into a map. And it is always that excitement of not knowing what we're going to get that makes me really happy. And I like having that thrill. That really brings me joy in diving with others as well, especially when some of the maps, actually all of the maps are procedurally generated. So it can feel, what's the word? Lacking in character sometimes. Like there's just not much thought or feeling to it because it is procedurally generated. But that's just how they decided to, create the game. But I do like the fact that the unknowing of what UML you're going to spawn. I also like the fact that there is, and if you haven't, this may be considered a spoiler. So if you haven't seen what is called a variant, skip through about maybe 30 seconds past in the video because I'm going to chat about the variants just a little bit. UML variants are a think of if you are a Pokemon fan, right? If you find a normal Pokemon and then you find a shiny of that Pokemon, that is what this game considers a variant. So it looks different. It's the same outward like model, but it has a different visual appearance. And whenever you spawn into a map, you will have the same UML no matter what. So it'll be the same uh, creature every time you spawn it. However, each time you spawn it in the map, so you scan the 7 of 7, 11 of 11, 9 of 9, etc., you have a chance to get the shiny variant. And that's a lot of fun. While it is a very low chance, it's still neat to be able to like have something to look forward to or work towards instead of just quickly grinding for all the UMLs, getting the mystery board pieces, etc., and then being done with the game because there wouldn't be much to do. They implemented this, in my opinion, to give the game more replayability, and I definitely think it does that. It's going to appeal to some people, not all. Me personally, I think it's fun when we come up on one accidentally. That's very exciting. However, I'm not going to be someone who grinds for every single UML variant purposefully. It's just not my play style in many games of that in general. I don't grind for shinies in Pokemon games while I love Pokemon. It's just not something I do. If I happen to come across them, I consider it a happy accident, right? So that's just my personal point. I know people that will grind for the variants, and I think it's phenomenal that they added this aspect in to give them a little bit more bang for their buck, so to speak, because the story is very short and very lacking. So I'm glad they had some forethought in that. Um, the final piece, or the last two pieces of pros that I'm going to talk about before the video ends is I really think that after 15 years since Endless Ocean Blue World, now Luminous launching, it's going to get people into the series. So if they like this and they decide to go back to the older games in the series, it may make the company, and I think Akira is still the company that produced it, want to support the game, right? Support it, whether it be more events or even producing another game further. This could be the game that's just gauging interest, right? They may be considering development of another Endless Ocean, but wasn't sure if people were still into the series or would consider playing the series. And this was their barrier, their marking point, or their gauge, so to speak. And if so, I really hope that they take some of the really beautiful and fun charm that came with older games in the series and implement it into a newer next gen game that can be run on updated consoles. So that's my overall thoughts and feelings of Endless Ocean Luminous, my the good, the bad, the ugly, all of that. Let me know in the comments what you feel like is the good, the bad, and maybe the ugly for you. Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree with what I said? I'm curious to know what you think. And until next time, guys, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.